Welcome in, everybody, to another Talking Tuesday Nights. Mike is having some technical difficulties, so you guys get to start off with me and how lovely that is. We got a absolutely bunch of stuff that's happened, gone down in Gamecock country today. There's a ton of stuff to talk about, ton of stuff to get to. Wait till we get some people in here, get some comments rolling. There's a boatload of stuff to talk about. Number one being the Dowell Loggains hire, as well as Pete Lembo getting an extension, a couple recruits decommitting, and other than that, there's still plenty to talk about, especially going on from last week. Marshawn Lloyd hitting the portal, that's another big one. There's a whole lot going on. Wait to see we get some of these comments going here, but yeah, there's plenty to talk about. Dowell Loggains being the first one. First and foremost, obviously Gamecock fans have been bittersweet on Twitter. I have not seen a whole lot of positivity, or at least when the news first broke last Wednesday, there was not a lot of positivity going on in terms of this hire. But since then, I've seen the fan base kind of turn around and, throw some positivity around about Dowell. I've loved to see, the fan base kind of changing things and just kind of giving this guy a chance because, he doesn't have the best track record, but a lot of that's from the NFL. He did well at Arkansas. He's a really, really, really good recruiter, and so I'm told. And hopefully he brings that tight end with him. I can't think of the guy's name, but, obviously, there's a lot of good things about Loggains. And then here's Mike, back is looking spiffy as ever. But yeah, plenty to talk about, Mike. Tons and tons of stuff to talk about, especially from Wednesday night when the news broke with Dowell Loggains. A lot of stuff there. A lot of guys hitting the portal. A lot of recruits decommitting, and then as well as the NIL front, there's a couple things going on there. So tons of stuff to talk about, Mike. I don't know where you want to start necessarily.
Well, first off, sorry for running a little bit behind, guys. Obviously, as you can see, just got off set up here in Boston, but plenty to talk about with the Gamecock. So look, it's difficult not to talk about what's transpired since the last time that we spoke. Obviously, Marshawn Lloyd has entered the portal. 2 decommitments on the offensive line. Loggains, his contract was approved today. Pete Lembo becoming the highest paid special teams coordinator who doesn't also hold an on-field role in a different position. So there's plenty to talk about. I don't want to seem like I'm overshadowing. I'm kind of putting to the side the transfers today or the OC hire. I just feel like because we're going to probably spend a lot of our time talking about that, I'm not going to begin the show with that. Instead, I want to mention the Pete Lembo stuff and kind of work from there. I want to talk about the things that we probably won't spend as much time about so that we can spend more time on things that I'm sure a lot of these people want to talk about, and rightfully so. So let's begin with Pete Lembo, okay? Lembo gets paid, was it $725,000? I think that was the number. He becomes now the highest paid special teams coordinator in the country. Highest paid special teams coordinator in the country that does not hold another on-field responsibility. Now, of course, I understand he's the associate head coach, but when I say another on-field responsibility, I'm talking about special teams coordinator and also tight ends coach, wide receivers coach, defensive back coach, whatever. That says something. I know some people, okay, why isn't he making $1 million? Do you understand how much money that is for a special teams coordinator? Good Lord. And he deserves every penny for what he's been able to do from a special team standpoint, first and foremost, but number two, what he brings to the table. We've talked about this before. He's in his 31st season coaching college football. He has 15 years of head coaching experience, 15 freaking years. We've said it before. This team does not go 8-4 this season in the regular season for just the 13th time program history to have 8 wins in the regular season. They don't do that if they don't have the type of special teams performances that they had this year. Okay. Number one, but number two, what Lembo has been able to do for Beamer in his growth as a coach, I don't think it should be overlooked. I think if anything, it shows that he's a humble guy and has humility, Beamer that is, to surround himself with guys who have done it as head coaches. So that's something I just wanted to mention. Now, let's get into actually, before I do want to shout out, or at least bring note to it, the passing of Mike Leach. And infectious personality. Joe, I know we covered SEC Media Days, and he was speaking that day because it was the same day South Carolina was speaking in Atlanta. My only interaction with him was when he was kind of just like behind me talking to one of the local reporters. And we were waiting to go in for the South Carolina local reporters. You have the other ones, got Saban in the hallway as well. And there might be like 5 or 6 of us there. And you can overhear everything, just the reporter talking one-on-one with them. And he was talking about something about like your favorite book. And the next thing you know, he went down this rabbit hole of like 8 different things. And it just kind of put a smile on my face because I had never talked to the guy directly. That's like the closest I've been able to hear him outside of on the camera. You see him on TV and all that. Truly what you saw was what you got with him. It was no act. I remember being at a wedding almost 2 years ago. Steve Spurrier Jr. was there, and we had a conversation about Leach, and he just his face just big old smile talking about the type of person he is and was. So thoughts and prayers with Leach, his family, and the Mississippi State community. I know I'm moving things quickly because, again, there's a lot to talk about. Before we get into the OC hire today, let's take a step back. Transfer portal. Marshawn Lloyd enters the portal. Put a story out on Gamecock Central yesterday. South Carolina is not the only school that is feeling the impact of the portal, NIL, all that kind of stuff. All right. To the point where South Carolina, believe it or not, they're actually the third fewest. They've had the third fewest transfers so far in the SEC. Now, I'd be naive to say that the caliber of players that are leaving, it doesn't stand out a little bit more. Of course it does. And if you're a Gamecock fan, if you cover the team, it's going to stand out a little bit more because you know how talented some of these guys are. Stogner, of course, he's going home because he wants to be closer to home. Okay, he's going back to Oklahoma. All right. Jaheim Bell, there's going to be people that are upset about that. Outside of the T-shirt situation, which I know we kind of talked about last week, at the end of the day, he made a decision. And because of how quickly it happened, it's evident that he kind of had a landing spot, which, as Chris Clark put out on Gamecock Central today, typically that's the case in some of these situations. It does not seem like that is the case with Marshawn Lloyd. And while NIL certainly can't be overlooked, as our colleague Chris Clark wrote today, from everything that he's been able to gather, from the people that I've spoke with, it seems like it was more of a playing time thing, or just the way they were using him, I should say. Playing time, of course, we knew he was the starter. The way that they were using him, and this goes back to even the beginning of the year. So I bring these things up because, you see the OC hire today, which, again, we're going to get to that. I don't want you to think we're just going to look at, putting that to the side. There's just been so much going on. I want to pay more attention to some of these other things because we're going to spend a lot of time, I feel like, on that. And I want to make sure we get to these things, Joe. So I say that because when you see Marshawn leave, and I said this last week, Joe, we're in an era now where some players are going to start leaving for whatever reason, right? Could be because they want to test the waters of essentially free agency by going into the portal, seeing what is out there, the NIL opportunities. Some players are going to leave because they want to see what else is out there from a playing opportunity, playing style, the system that they're in. Even though this decision was made in the midst of a OC hire, I don't really think it had that much to do with it. Again, based on what Chris reported, based on what I've been told, this was something that was a lingering issue going back to, again, the beginning of the season.
Yeah, Mike, definitely. I mean, I think there was a lot. It was weird to me, honestly, because the way they finished out the season with those 2 big wins, I really didn't understand how the portal really kind of opened up the way it did. With Lloyd, I mean, my preconceived notion was that he was going to either go to the draft or go elsewhere. And then, I mean, obviously with Stogner, we didn't really see that one coming, but we talked about that a lot last week. that was a big thing. But Jaheim Bell was another guy that really didn't necessarily see leaving. You knew there were frustrations within the building. But I guess the only surprising part about the way that this has gone, right, and especially for fans too, I'm probably wondering why this is all happening after they won two of the biggest games of the year and ended it on a high note. I mean, you were 5 days into the offseason, and then all of a sudden the house is burning. Well, and now don't necessarily jump to that conclusion yet, because I wouldn't necessarily say it is. You still have guys like Lavassier Carroll. The transfer portal is still wide open. And we've seen that Shane will go after guys in the transfer portal. You saw that with Spencer. You saw that with Juice Wells, and you've seen that, with other guys too. But I don't necessarily think the house is burning necessarily, Mike. But what I will say to this is, though, that I feel like a lot of fans are up in arms, and a lot of people are up in arms just because you end the year on such a positive note. You would expect things to trend, further into positivity, right? You wouldn't expect guys to jump into the portal like they did, and as quickly as this all has happened. Marshawn's news came literally the week after Jaheim. So it's all happened so fast, and I think that's leading to fans just kind of wondering what the heck just happened.
Well, it's just, again, I'm putting the number out there for people that want to call into the program. Intern Joe will take care of you. That number is 803-567-3796. Throw that up there for you guys. Again, we're in this, and I know I keep using the same words, but I feel like it's as simple as what we're saying, which is we're in this new era. We're in this new era. And there are regulations that the NCAA has put in place, but there's some regulations that they don't have control of, right? You look at the litigation that's going on from state to state as far as NIL is concerned. You can only control so much, right? I've seen commenters on the Insider Forum recommending changes, and I was on another show this morning and got brought up, why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? I don't disagree with the thought process and why some of these people are suggesting the changes that you'd want to see. The problem is, because of the laws in each state now, it's not going to happen. So I think what the unfortunate reality is that unless the NCAA does something, which you're going to have to do things that you can control, right? You're going to have to do things that are going to impact other players who might be using the transfer portal in ways where it's like, all right, hey, you know what? They want to go take this opportunity to do that. That's why I'm not going to knock Jaheim. I'm not going to knock Lloyd. I'm not going to knock any of these players, because at the end of the day, what they're doing right now, they're taking advantage of what the rules are. They're not doing anything illegal. Now, of course, if there's going to be one person that's watching this, or two people, Joe, saying, well, what if they got, someone reached out to them and their family? Okay, I understand that. But based off of what we know right now, okay, based off of what we know right now, because I'm not naive. I know what happens across the country. I know it used to happen too back in the day, before the transfer portal, before NIL was there. But what I'm trying to get at is, if you want to do something where you feel like you can get some type of policing in, some type of regulation, I feel like the only way that you can really do that, or one of the ways, would be to have some type of penalty like they used to when you enter the transfer portal. Because again, if the concern is NIL, right? If the concern is NIL is being taken advantage of in some shape, way, or form, and I'm not saying that when we brought up, Stogner, Bell, Lloyd, I'm not saying that that is the main reason or the reason why these guys all left. They all left. It was case by case. But I'm talking in the broader sense of the transfer portal, that you have to find a way to police it. And you're not going to be able to police it through NIL. You can't, the NCAA, their hands are tied with that. Like we talked about. That involves laws. That's talk about state to state. The NCAA, what they can control, is being able to implement a penalty if you want to hop around. So I bring these things up because this is more so talking to the people that are concerned about the future of college football, college athletics as a whole. And I hear you. I understand. And when we're talking about NIL, the Garnet Trust, some of the other organizations that are out there that are collecting money that go to these players, I understand your frustration. What I would say to that, though, Joe, is that unfortunately, and obviously I'm talking to Gamecock fans, but could be any college football fan for that matter. If you don't do it, if you don't take part in NIL, if a fan base is like, you know what, there's going to be other teams, especially in the SEC, there's going to be other teams in that conference that will. And it's only going to make it that much harder to be able to keep up. Now, we're going to have to wait 3, 4, 5 years to see how much of a correlation between NIL and success, right? Is there a direct correlation? We saw what happened with A&M. It's an absolute freaking mess over there right now. 20 players just hit the portal. And all this talk all offseason, NIL. A lot of good it did for them, right? Yeah. But I still feel like you need some type of NIL, but it is scary right now, Joe. And I understand the frustration from the fans.
Yeah, Mike. I mean, I think, the NIL aspect kind of makes it worse, right? It gives guys an out necessarily, number one. It gives guys an excuse to be like, I wasn't making enough money, and then help them build their brand at whatever school they go to. And I mean, I think the only real way to kind of, I guess, if we want to bring up the word tampering, because we've always heard rumbles of, coaches reaching out to guys when they're still at other schools and stuff. And I haven't heard anything about that in particular. And I'm not going to get into any rumors that I've heard or anything like that. But you hear that from time to time. You hear that guys, will have a coach reach out to them. And I think the only way to combat that, and the only way to really kind of make guys really consider their decision on where to transfer and if they want to transfer, is by implementing that, sitting out for a period of time. I think that just has to be a thing, because right now it's like free agency, Mike. And I think the NIL aspect makes it different as we're getting.
I'm going to let intern Joe do something real quick. And Renee, I'm not coming after you because I know how information gets spread, and sometimes but this is the stuff that I'm talking about here. Okay. Renee says in Lloyd's goodbye speech, he did not thank Beamer. That is not true. That is inaccurate. I have it right in front of me. Third paragraph from Lloyd, posted last night, 7/28, December 12th. I would like to thank Coach Beamer, the rest of the coaching staff and trainers for helping me develop into the player that I am today. So I bring that up because, and then there was, this, he left the team in the dark. Beamer didn't know this was coming. That is not accurate either. As my colleague Chris Clark reported on today on Gamecock Central, that he gave them a heads up. But I just, you try to correct some of the misinformation. There's a lot of misinformation out there when it comes to some of these things. But that's something that I just wanted to bring up. Hunter, you're on the GC Live Talking Tuesday. I keep forgetting we're on the post-game show right now. It's been a while since we've had a game.
Not that ball.
All right, Hunter, we got you.
Hey, you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So what's your thoughts on Spencer Rattler coming back next year?
I think right now, and we're going to get into, obviously the OC hire, but I can tell you right now that he's still weighing out his options. From everything that I've been told, we put this out maybe 2-3 weeks ago, from talking to people close to the situation, that the OC hire would certainly play a big role with Rattler's decision. I think one thing that should make you feel good about the hire, and again, we'll get into the Loggains hire more in a little bit, but he does have that NFL background, and that's something that Rattler is looking for, because he wants to be able to develop his game into being NFL style, right? So I bring that up because from a schematical standpoint, and, I also threw this out there, I didn't say the specific players, but I know that Loggains had reached out to a handful of offensive players already, both currently on the roster and also going through the recruiting process. But I bring that up because I think there is, look, at the end of the day, there's a lot of changes going on in South Carolina, right? You look at the offensive line. We know that what just took place with Jaheim Bell, Marshawn Lloyd, all these things are happening. Certainly that's something else that Rattler is going to have to weigh into his decision. But I think ultimately what's going to come down to is what Rattler truly believes is going to be best for him, and all those moving factors, everything that's been taking place. I think, it's something that he'll pay attention to. But But basically what I'd tell you, Hunter, right now is I think it's leaning in the direction of him coming back.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, I agree. I think there's
That's good. That's good.
there's a good a chance of ever as him coming back.
Yeah, I mean, and one more question: you don't think this whole this will affect Nick Harbor going to Maryland, or if he's still might come to us? Because I know his girl or something like that goes to school, goes to our school or something like that. So I'm not sure if that's going to affect anything with him.
When you say affect Harbor, you talk about Rattler specifically, or you're talking about other things that are going on right now at South Carolina?
Basically, other things going around with South Carolina.
I mean, shoot. I mean, the easy answer would be like, oh, I don't think I'll have any impact. I mean, certainly it grabs people's attention. We saw Rames today taking to Twitter saying, what the heck's going on? And then he comes out a little bit later saying like ready to go, committed or locked in, something to that effect. I think as far as Nicholas Harbor goes, I think being able to get an OC in there as quickly as possible, as South Carolina has, I think it helps them in regards to being able to try to get things going as quickly as possible, right? I mean, you talk about the foundation, and from an OC standpoint, you need to be able to get an OC in there as quickly as possible from a recruiting standpoint, right? So I think being able to have that guy over there now, in Dowell, being able to have opportunities to talk with Nicholas, I think it's only going to help. But ultimately, I feel like, look, Nicholas is going to make whatever decision he wants to make. I feel like we've seen what's transpired at South Carolina a couple weeks ago. I still think there is some momentum there compared to what social media will tell you right now, because, yes, I understand the frustration from this fan base right now, but I mean, look, there's still a lot of positive things that are in place. So that's why I would tell people like, hey, look, I get it, but deep breaths. It's not like, it's not like this is a couple years ago where you have 2 wins. I mean, if they're coming off a 2-win season, I would say, hey, slow down,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you got a point. And one more thing, with the whole 3 thing decommitting, and I've seen his live on Instagram, and he kept saying like he wants to, if you wanted to go to Alabama, he wished he had offers from Alabama and Georgia because he would have been a 5-star, and apparently would have he wanted better offers, scholarship offers, I guess, and yeah, so I felt like he's only decommitting because he wants more money.
And look, obviously it's more speculation than anything else. And I say that not as a shot at you, Hunter, but I think, I think we're all naive not to think just a little bit, especially when you have that much talent and you're seeing some of the numbers that are getting thrown around at some of these kids. Obviously there's okay, let's go through the recruiting process and I want to do it the right way. Now I want to do it the right way, but I also want to be able to, and that right way is also being able to listen to what opportunities are out there from an NIL standpoint. So, from conversations with some of the people I've spoke with, I wouldn't say the door is fully shut on South Carolina. I mean, you look at, was it Jada? His situation's a little bit different. He just had an official visit at Auburn. I know that Colorado came into the mix. It seems like it's leaning towards Auburn. Colorado, though, is right there. Like, I understand that. But with Mabalade, with Tree, I think it's one of those things. I think he just wants to be able to, again, do it the right way in his mind. And I say his mind. I think a lot of people would do it this way. If they feel like there's opportunities from an NIL standpoint, why not? Why not at least go through it? And if there is a dream school of yours, how can you knock a kid? I know that we saw that with Jarvis Green.
Yeah, I mean, if I was him, I would want to go to primetime too. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I mean, look, we saw what happened with Jarvis Green. He grew up a Clemson fan. James Madison was a school that offered him, and shout out to his coach, Tom Knotts. Tom Knotts did a hell of a job of being able to say, hey, look, one of these coaches, and I had my opinions on it. We know South Carolina has a very good running back coming in from the state of Georgia. Certainly, you don't anticipate things like Marshawn Lloyd leaving when he did, but we know that was his spot. Green wanted to go to Clemson. That was his dream school, and ultimately, as we saw over the last 24, 48 hours, that's what he decided to do.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's all I need, man. I appreciate it.
All right, Hunter, we appreciate it. And again, just some of these comments that I saw, I just want to hit on some of them. Yeah, and Renee, no, you're good, Renee. You're good, Renee. That's why I wanted you to know that I wasn't picking on you. I just wanted to be able to bring that up because you weren't the first person that said that. But no problem at all. But that's, that I'm using it as an example because I've seen some of it on the message boards and obviously Twitter as well. Just being able to point out some of those things. Let's go back to some of these. Try to get some of these comments in that I had from before. Here we go. Steven says, do you think if there was any problems with Lloyd? Do you think there was problems with Lloyd and Shane? I wouldn't say problems. I mean, certainly Lloyd was recruited by Will Muschamp. We know that he has a lot of respect for Muschamp. I know some people are tired of hearing Muschamp's name, but I mean, we still have players that are part of the Muschamp era, right? I bring all that up. I don't think, I think it'd be unfair to say, oh, they're weeding out the Muschamp players. I mean, Lloyd was, from everything that I was told about him, from every interaction that I had around him, he was and is just a very, very, very stand-up guy, classy guy. But, there were reports that leaked out during the beginning of the season. Joe, I'm trying to remember if time frame wise, but conversations of Lloyd wanting to be able to get more touches earlier in the year. I think we heard that before. I don't know if he said that directly to Beamer or to Satterfield. I mean, you were at a lot of those press conferences in person. I don't know if this rings a bell to you.
Yeah, it was definitely earlier on in the year, kind of before it was like after the Arkansas and Georgia games. And I remember like that was going to be one of the focuses for the non-conference games to kind of just get the run game going in general. It wasn't necessarily Lloyd focused, but I can remember him being upset with his touches and stuff like that. And that, rightfully so. They were trying to figure out which back worked and whatnot. But yeah, it was definitely I think it was with the Arkansas and Georgia game right before they went into the non-conference. And they said, that was just a general piece too, was to get the running game going. It wasn't great. In the first 3 weeks, let alone the first week against Georgia State, they didn't really run the ball that efficiently, let alone the entire offense. But especially against Georgia and Arkansas, it wasn't great at all. So I know that was one of the things that they were going into the non-conference game, Charlotte and SC State, to really work on, really hammer home. And Marshawn Lloyd had his best game of the year against Charlotte. I believe he had 3 touchdowns. I don't have the stats in front of me, but Charlotte was his bigger game and the kind of, I guess, icing on the cake going towards, the end of the year in terms of his touches. They found out that's kind of what he wanted and whatnot. But yeah, earlier in the year for sure, Mike.
So to look at Patrick again, if some of you guys are just hopping on with us, as our colleague Chris Clark reported, if you want to go read that full report over at Gamecock Central, you can. But, from what he was able to gather, some of the things that I've been able to gather as well, NIL wasn't the main thing here. Again, that's going to be the case for some players. That's not to say he doesn't end up at a school that has NIL opportunities or could be even bigger NIL opportunities that he had at South Carolina. But in terms of kind of ranking them, the priorities, that wasn't the main reason. And I think that's what surprises a lot of people, right? You have a running back. And look, I think we go back to when he arrived on campus, the second coming of Marcus Lattimore, I felt like is what we heard, just the comments, right? And I'm not going to get into the comparing 5 stars, 4 stars. We know what Marcus Lattimore meant to USC, what he still means to USC. But this was the highest rated running back that they had recruited since then during that time period. So I bring that up because for him to go down with that ACL injury a couple of days into his freshman season, and then he bounces back 2 years later to have the type of season that he had this year before having that brutal bruise on his thigh, which, as Chris Clark also reported, I think it was Chris or it was Wes, put out, it might have been Chris, that it's a similar injury that Austin Stogner suffered at Oklahoma to the point where it actually got infected. So I bring these things up because there were obviously, look, we talk about a roller coaster of a season for the Gamecocks. Some of these players, just as people, they had roller coasters of years, injuries included. T mentions we should look at our Under Armour deal with them. I'll say this. I know there's going to be people that disagree with me. If a kid really is that worried about freaking going to a school, and T, I don't know if you're specifically saying this, so it's not like a direct shot at you or anything like that, but I've seen it so many freaking times. If a kid's more worried about what the hell he's wearing, right? Really? We've got to a point now, I feel like everything kind of freaking, feels all the same, right? Dry fit, I bring these things up because, okay, Nike, Jordan, look great. But honestly, like Notre Dame has been Under Armour for God, I don't even know how many years. They were Adidas for many years. Has that really impacted them? I know they're not in the conference, okay? I know they haven't really done anything in the college football playoff, but they've had some really, really good years. They've beat some really good teams, ranked. So that's just an example that I'm bringing up. It's just like it doesn't seem like it's stopping them. It's not stopping women's basketball. So I bring these things up because I think ultimately at the end of the day, could it hurt? No. I'm not going to say it could hurt, but I don't think that's the main issue. I think there's other things going on, case-by-case situations when you look at some of these players that have entered the portal, Joe. But I don't think that is the case. And I think what T was I go on this huge freaking I ramble on. I think what T basically was asking me is Under Armour deal with giving Maryland NIL cash. So I answered that question completely the wrong way, T. I am very sorry. But everything I said, I still stand by. I don't know that specifically. I don't know that. We know that there are, look, you look at the situation with women's basketball at South Carolina. All those players are making $25,000. $25,000. Now, that's not a you look at, you mentioned the Under Armour with Maryland. I don't know the exact number. I know that there's something out there. But I'd be lying to you. I don't follow the Terps, that often. Might be something to look into though. But T, I'm glad you got me going there with the question that you didn't even ask me. So I apologize for that. But I think the point still stands though, Joe.
Yeah. Yeah, Mike. I mean, I know like the only reason that would be a thing, I think it's within their deal. Yeah. But I mean, the founder of Under Armour went to Maryland. So that's like he started it up. And so like I think that's the only reason that's the case. It's an alum helping out his school. I don't necessarily think it's tied in. I mean, obviously it's tied in with their merch deal because Under Armour is a merch company. But no, I think it's simply because the founder of Under Armour went to Maryland. So I think that's the reason why they're doing that and like setting that up. And granted, like I'm sure Tanner could
just like Phil Knight.
Yeah, exactly.
In Oregon.
Phil Knight, yeah, exactly. Phil Knight gives Oregon all the benefits and all that stuff. So yeah, exactly right, Mike. You're hitting it on the head. So I think that's just the case of the alum, if you will.
This actually stood out to me, and I do want to. We'll get it of Daniel asked, are the O-line decommitting? Are they decommitting? Is it related possibly of Atkins not being retained? That decision ultimately would be made by Beamer. Okay. That's not going to be a Loggains decision. I did find it interesting though. Joe. I was talking to Colin Taylor about this. I think he's the one that pointed it out. That Atkins was not in Tree's message. I think it was Tree's. Let's go back and double check. But Tree's message that he was decommitting. It was the other offensive lineman. And that just offensive line coach. And that really kind of just stood out. Like intern Joe is freezing over there for a second. So intern Joe, can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you now. Wi-Fi's been bad all week. Got me.
I got you. Is it me or you?
I don't know. I can't tell.
No, did you hear me right there?
I can hear you. Everything's good now. My Wi-Fi's been bad all week.
Did you see the message?
I did not.
Did you see the message from Tree today?
I saw the tweet.
So, and this is something that Okay, so that's Trees, excuse me, that
Yeah.
put that out. The tweet that I'm talking about, though, so using some people here, that offensive lineman in the span of what, 30 minutes that decommitted. Jada was the one that put the long message out there. Teasley was the one that was in there, but he didn't thank Coach Atkins. So I bring that up because there are some questions as to what's going on at South Carolina with the offensive line coach position. Again, I don't like to speculate too much on when it comes to recruiting because it's difficult to. You don't know what some of these 17, 18, 19-year-olds are thinking. But just throwing that out there, that's on the table, And again, could have just been because Atkins, from what I was told, was big with his recruitment. So it's just interesting not seeing that there. But, I don't know if that really answers your question, Daniel, but that's something that did stand out to me. I don't you have any thoughts on that,
Atkins,
Joe?
he's been out recruiting as hard as anybody else. He's been on a lot of the jets that Beamer's been taking to go see all the guys in the trenches. He's been there with Sterling Lucas. So I think, Atkins has been involved as anybody in recruiting all these offensive and defensive linemen. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily think it would be something with like him leaving or something like that. Like, I mean, I think it would just be, kind of the personal choice. I don't necessarily think it has anything to do with Atkins leaving or staying or either way. Because, I mean, he's been involved with everybody.
Yeah, so again, real quickly before we move on to the offensive coordinator hire with Dowell, I think, look, bottom line is this. The offensive lineman, they decommitted today. I think 6 of it look bad to some fans, right? These two things happen shortly after the OC was hired. But when you take a step back, okay, I think you'd be very, very naive to believe that there's a direct connection with the two. I mean, look, a player's going to make a decision an hour after. Oh, I'm done. I mean, come on. I think like we said with Jada, you look at the timeline, right? Visits Auburn a couple ago. Colorado offered him. It's just two schools that he's leaning towards. I mean, the timing makes sense from that, right? I mean, you see this. You see teams come in last minute. Wow, you know what? Blew me away.
Yeah, Mike. I mean, I think he's more of an Auburn lean, to be honest. I think he visited Auburn. He got his offer, then visited. Or I think he visited, then got his offer. My thing about Colorado is that Coach Prime wanted him at Jackson State. He had always had an offer from Coach Prime, and now I guess maybe that Coach Prime being elevated to the Pac-12 in Colorado that might have a difference on him. But I think Auburn's the big lean here. What we got to watch for. Because they kind of came on.
I don't know what's going on with intern Joe's connection right now. So when intern Joe gets back, we'll have him pop up there real quick. Apologize for the technical difficulties. I'll take the blame. It's my fault. Intern Joe, it's like having a receiver. Not going to point any fingers. It's all on me. And I see Cocky talk. I think there's definitely a connection when you look at that the DMV area, right? I mean, there's something to be those players who play in that area and the connection that they have. And again, I mentioned, right? It's like, okay, can understand that. Then you look at Big Tree. I think it was Sunday, Joe. You had about 6 coaches out there visiting him. And what happens the transfer portal? Quote tweets it. I think he had like a sad face or like, serious, like, basically just bummed out. So I bring that up because I think the exact words, he had an emoji smacking yourself in the face and said, "Oh man." Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he wanted to play with them. I think that changed things certainly. But again, I also think too, when you know that there's opportunities out there from an NIL standpoint he's going after. But shoot, why not? Why not listen? I know Gamecock fans don't want to hear that.
Losing your mind.
But just the reality of it. So that's what I would say about some of the timeline stuff. Slow down. It's not coming to an end. Frustration. Frustration is kicking in just because, again, where this program was 2 weeks ago, what has transpired since then. I said this though before, Joe. Regardless of a win in this bowl game, I don't think that takes away anything from this season.
Yeah,
I don't. 8-4 in the regular season. 13th time that's ever happened in program history season. And I'm not trying just to look at it and be like, all right, he's putting a positive spin on it. No, I think it's just the reality of it and what they were able to do to finish out the season. The frustrating part is that this isn't 2009 or whatever the case may be a couple years ago. This is going to be something where you're going to have to deal with guys leaving left and right every freaking year. And again, you're not the only team that is dealing with it. I understand it feels like it's the end of the world right now, but some of the guys that are leaving, and then doesn't help with the transfer portal stuff. And I know there's some people out there that hire with Dowell. But this was, to give you an idea, this was as of yesterday. Transfer portal, A&M, 23 players. Arkansas, 20 players. Florida, 18. Ole Miss, 16. Alabama, 14. Vanderbilt, 12. Auburn, 11. Kentucky, 10. Mississippi State, 10. And God bless them. God bless Mississippi State. I think it's one of those things, Joe, that when someone passes away, time heals all, right? You hear that all the time. The unfortunate reality is college football is a business, and it's college football. And my heart to Mississippi State. Obviously, I was not around during the Joe Morrison days when he passed away, but we know the impact that had on USC. That's going to be very difficult for them over the next couple of years to be able to get things heading in the right direction again. That could go, and I say that just because signing day is coming up. Things life is more important than, but again, we're talking about a business that's just not going to stop. And I think Mike Leach would be able to, he'd tell you that too. I mean, I see that number there, Joe. I think that number unfortunately could go up. God, my heart goes out for those players. And, I hope that didn't come across as insensitive. I'm just the reality, and it stinks. It stinks. And my heart aches for those kids because it's, but LSU, Missouri, LSU has 9, and then you have Missouri, Tennessee, South Carolina 7, then Georgia 1. Georgia, that number will probably go up after the college football playoff. I bring these things up though, Joe, because I'm just showing that other teams are in, I don't want to say truly similar situations, but other teams are going through the transfer portal situations. When I say similar, you would think, okay, starters, how many snaps this player play in comparison to that player on that team. But that's just to kind of give people an idea.
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. I mentioned it earlier when we started the show. I don't necessarily think the house is on fire yet. I mean, Beamer hasn't really committed any guys from the portal yet. All we're seeing is guys go into it. So calm down, really, is all we can ask for. It's still early. And I mean, I agree. It's a very good reason to be worried because all of this stuff has happened so fast. And again, like I said earlier, was that, all of this happened so fast coming after, two of the biggest wins, arguably definitely in the Beamer era, but, somebody could match them up, throw them top 10 in the program too, even though. So, having all of this happen.
Intern Joe's hitting some that Wi-Fi, man. We'll get him back on in a second. I do want to this from H-Man asking about Spencer Rattler and the offense. And I think for Rattler, right, and I can only speculate to, based on the things that I've been told. I can't fully put my mind in his head and tell you exactly what he's thinking, but I do think that when you look at the reality of it, Rattler had some real good games to close out the year. Phenomenal game in the bowl game. Okay. That's great, but will it be enough for scouts to feel like he is worth drafting at, position X, Y, Z, whatever that round is, or bringing him to a camp, bringing him in? I think his stock certainly went up, but I just don't know if it's enough. I don't think it's enough. I think we've all known the talent's there. Take part, in Pro Day in a couple months, based on how he throws the football, his mechanics, just how quick that ball comes out there. He will dominate wearing shorts out there, right? The shorts and t-shirts. He'll be slinging that thing around. I think there is an upside for him to come back. Obviously, there's always a downside. You're going to be learning from a new OC, which I said before. Whether he wanted, it seems like it's going to be NFL or it's going to be come back. Transfer portal, from what we've been told, that doesn't seem like that's on the table. But he's going to have to learn a new offense, regardless if he, goes pro, stays, even if he were to transfer, which, again, I don't think that's going to be the case. So he's going to have to learn a new playbook regardless. Having an opportunity to work with someone that has had, 13 years in the NFL. And I know there's going to be people out there and say, oh, look what he did. He didn't do anything special. I mean, look at some of those teams. The Browns, the Jets, the Titans. I mean, but what are we talking about here? Right? I mean, you go see. I mean, these teams right there, just typically have not been that. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that he has NFL experience. And when you're looking at Rattler, who's, deciding whether or not to come back, I think it can help. I think it can help because it shows you, hey, look, this is what you can do. Let's see what this is. Mike, I believe you said we were going to be a passing team or something of that nature. Could that have been something with Lloyd leaving? No. What you smirking at?
Reading the comments.
My comments behind Joe?
Yeah, comments way down below. The ones coming in live.
All right, I'll have to catch up. I don't think that had an impact with it. I think, again, this goes back to even before the OC was hired. I think Lloyd already had a foot out from what it sounds like. And again, you can go back and check out that report from Chris Clark. He really details everything down and explains more to it. Try to keep going down here, Joe. We got Nike, people talking about Nike now and Under Armour. Oh, it was me. I was the one that was breaking up. All right. Again, it's my fault. I don't know what's going on. We're in a good building here. This is where I always am working remotely.
My Wi-Fi was bad last week.
I will say this though, talking about the OC hire. Man, and Joey Cheeks, Notre Dame legend. I will say this though. With Dowell Loggains being hired today, or officially being, his contract being approved by South. The feedback, and I put this out there on Gamecock Central. There's a video out there if you guys want to watch that. But basically what I said was, from conversations with people close to the program, some of the players had talked directly to him, in recruits as well. Like he had already got down to work, and he'd fired up some of these players. And I think sometimes too, when you see some of the comments, I've had comments because someone said, I think on Gamecock Central, this seems more like a puff piece. Like, if a player told me, like, you know what, I think this guy sucks, I would have put that out there. It wouldn't be the first time I got a phone call from USC upset with me. I mean, that's just anyone that's been in this business as long as, I wouldn't say as long as I have, because there's people that's a lot longer. But you don't have to be in this business that long for something like that to happen, is what I'm trying to get at. I will say this, though. I will say this. The fact that you had guys excited about he was selling the offense, number one, but number two, that one point that he mentioned, which was we want to be a team that passes the football. And that's what that commenter was mentioning about. I think that's something that, if you're Spencer Rattler, if you're Dante Reno from a recruiting standpoint, on the list of guys, whether they're, current Gamecocks, future Gamecocks, if you're a quarterback, it sounds like this is going to be a system that quarterbacks are going to want to play in, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You've seen some of the quarterbacks like he's had in the NFL. I mean, Jay Cutler's one of them. I'm a big Bears fan of being from around there. I saw Justin King and his team was able to get a message from Jay Cutler. So obviously, like as a quarterback who wants to go to the next level, obviously you're really excited about a guy who brings a pro style element into this. So I think it's a big thing. And two, I mean, we look at how good of a recruiter Loggains is. He's got 3 4-star tight ends, I believe, that were already committed to Arkansas. And 2, he's got Trey Knox decommitting. I mean, Trey Knox was like the 3rd-ranked tight end in the SEC. So I think, Trey Knox is going to come in. And, I mean, obviously we've seen the 2 tight ends from South Carolina that have entered the portal. So if Trey Knox does all of a sudden flip over to South Carolina, I think that's a huge thing. It's a huge thing for South Carolina. And 2, again, like offensively, like for Spencer's standpoint, like we said, Mike, his decision to stay could it's as big as a chance of him staying as there ever was, really. It kind of depends on how he plays in the bowl game.
Yeah.
But I think it really just depends. But
yeah, guys, I'm sorry that the internet's really crappy tonight. I don't know what the issue is, but I will say this though, we got to make sure that we get our ads in before we wrap up the show. So we'll get that in just to be safe, but apologize for the issues tonight with the Wi-Fi. We will get that corrected for next week. Where are we here? Nothing wants to work tonight, intern Joe. Here we go. Hey, it's one of those nights, but I'll tell you what, even though my Wi-Fi is crashing, there's some people that you can always count on. Some of those people are Liberty Tax. Right around the corner, they'll be able to help you overcome taxiety. Give them a call at 803-462-5576. And today's program is also brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond. You saw that nice banner at the beginning of the show, but we wanted to show off that lettuce of intern Joe over at the Mortgage Network. He'll be able to help you out because right now buying a home, it is an absolute zoo out there in that market. Clint will be able to make your life a little bit easier, just like he did for former Gamecock Harry Orth. Give him a call at 803-576-4450. Intern Joe is a man of the people.
Oh, yeah.
Intern Joe is
my army from Twitter has made it over onto the show. My shout out to everyone who has gotten Mike to give me some Bojangles sandwiches. I appreciate it. I'm a broke college student, so I needed that. I appreciate intern Joe Army. We like it. I've got a little Twitter following now.
Joe, the flight is booked. We're waiting for the credential update. So we're either going to be covering the bowl game from the field, from the press box, or we will be in the stands and then do a post-game show afterwards because you only have X amount of credentials and, we're working through everything. But point being is I will be down in Jacksonville. Breaking news. I will be down in Jacksonville. Very excited for that game. If you haven't heard already, Patrick Davis is going to be doing a concert down in Jacksonville tonight. Well, the Gator Bowl, they don't really have too many fun activities planned for people down there. There's like a 5K race the next morning after the game. Like, who the hell is going to still be around? That's probably for a great cause, and I probably just sounded like an asshole saying that. But the point being is There's going to be a lot of people. Davis is going to be putting on an event. That concert is going to be, I believe, connected with the Garnet Trust. So, point being is, we're talking about all these opportunities to be able to support the Gamecocks, be able to raise NIL money, and be able to just have fun. This is going to be a good opportunity for that. This will be as far as the thoughts. Mike, who was a better OC in your opinion, Matt Patricia? Well, I'll tell you what. They did a bunch of screens last night. It's good to see Kevin Harris get that first career touchdown. Man, he's done a hell of a job. Bummed out that they're actually still staying on the West Coast. So they're going to be out there this week. Won't see Kevin Harris until the following week. But I'm excited to listen to him. It was funny just listening to him talk on air because, as many of you guys know, when he's in front of the cameras, he doesn't like to talk much. He was just smiling. He was real happy all night. So that was a cool moment for Kevin to score, and especially score on a nationally televised game, since it was Monday Night Football and the rest of the country had a chance to be able to see him. I think things are going to work out with Dowell Loggains. I really do. For people to say that, okay, this is going to be exactly what happened with Satterfield, I don't think that's going to be the case. And the main reason why is because when Beamer hired Satterfield, right? Okay, this is my first time as a head coach. What is the leash that I'm going to be able to give my OC? And we go back during the Muschamp era. That was one of the biggest issues that Muschamp had. We heard Muschamp put too tight of a leash on his OCs to the point where they weren't really able to call the offenses. Now, that's what some of the former players who played for him would say. I bring that up because I think that what we saw over the last 2 games of the season, I think we saw a totally different Gamecock offense. They simplified things. That's been evident, whether it be from watching that Tennessee and Clemson games or just from – I bring that up because I do feel like Beamer's going to take the lessons that he learned from the, 20-plus games, 24, 26, 25, whatever the case may be, 25 games of working with Satterfield, what worked, what didn't, and what they need to be able to do better. And I also think people need to remember is this. If Briles was leaving, if the OC at Arkansas was leaving, they were ready. They were ready to name Loggains as the OC. So I bring that up because, there's some people out there saying like, oh, no one wanted this guy as an OC. Like, that's not exactly true. It's not exactly true. So we'll kind of just leave it at that. I think, look, and he's bringing in, and this is, Chad, I'm glad you brought it up. Comparing it to Sat, I mean, he has 13 years of NFL coaching experience. A lot of those years, he was an offensive coordinator. So I bring that in to the conversation. Intern Joe, I'm going to take you up. You want to just go talk to your little group? Intern Joe is a big superstar now. Everyone's comment side chat.
To laugh at these comments.
But I will say this.
Getting to it. I hear it, Mike.
Intern Joe, real quickly though. God's honest truth though. What are you looking for from Loggains though, in order to have success, so that when we look back to not just next year, but in a couple of years, right? It's a 3-year contract that people say, hey, you know what? This was a good hire.
Obviously we're looking for scoring. I think that's one thing the Satterfield offense didn't really have. And I think another thing is not being so multidimensional. I think if Loggains can kind of keep it together, and because one of the biggest complaints with Sat was that the playbook was so big and that they would run stuff in practice that they wouldn't run in the games. I think if Loggains can kind of keep it real streamlined and, say, hey, this is what we're going to do, and keep it, very streamlined and week to week, adjust it based on that. I think that's one of the big things. And obviously, points, you want to score points to the offensive coordinator, but I think if they can score a lot. But another thing for recruiting aspect wise, I think you got to see some uptick on recruiting, not just running backs, but also, quarterbacks and wide receivers and everything on the offensive side of the board. I think he has to live up to all the hype that he's been getting on the recruiting end. I think that's what fans are really kind of hanging on, is the fact that, he's such a good recruiter. I think you got to start bringing guys in. And I think it starts with Nicholas Harbor. I know like that situation's fluid, but I mean, there's a lot of guys on offense that, that South Carolina could have gotten and then haven't in these first 2 years. And so I would think that one of the biggest pieces as an OC, you got to be able to recruit. And Beamer's a great recruiter in himself, but if you can add another piece that's, like Loggains, that's, living, if he lives up to hype,
real quick, okay? 13 years, fired 6 times. We also looked at those situations that he was in, right? The Jets, that was just an absolute mess. I mean, you look at some of these situations that they were in. That's why I'm just saying it's like he did at the NFL level. And to say that it's not going to work here, I think that's just a lazy take. I think that's a really freaking lazy take. And I think the real reason why people are saying it more than anything, and I think I can understand where people are coming from, is that they have this PTSD of what took place with Satterfield for the first, 20-something games. And I know there were some other games sprinkled in. We can go back to the Duke's mail. But I think they see that. They see that their fifth OC that's been hired since 2016. Dude, just 2016. No Gamecock OC has lasted more than 2 years. No Gamecock OC has lasted more than 2 years. Because I don't think, look, Bill Walsh, the second coming of Bill Walsh wasn't coming in here. It just wasn't going to happen. I think there were some Gamecock fans picking them up for setting themselves up for failure, because I think they just assumed there was going to be this huge, huge hire from a, like, wow, everyone's going to go crazy. I could be dead wrong. We could look back and we could be like, you know what? This situation just didn't work out. Okay. But I will say this. There was a lot of pushback, fans included, but donors, boosters, whatever, they weren't happy with this hire at first. I know Beamer wasn't happy with the pushback that he received. I will say this. Ultimately, let the head coach pick his guys. Let the head coach pick his guys. Bill Parcells used to say something when he was with the Patriots back in the day. And it was a little bit different because, of course, drafting but it's the same as when you're talking about putting a staff together. They want you to cook the meal. The least they can do is let you shop for the groceries. So, on that note, let Shane Beamer shop for the groceries if they want him to be the one that cooks. And I think he's gonna. I think, look, I don't know what this offense is gonna look like quite yet next year. I don't think any of us do, because we're seeing obviously that come back. You have a guy like Juice Wells come back. You have a guy like Rattler. You have a guy at times, and he'll, you would assume he's going to have a bigger role next season. What happens with the Carry-On Joiner? There's rumbles that he might not be done quite yet. If he does come back, having an extra year of working with Justin Stepp, what can that do for him as a wide receiver? And then don't forget, Logan Sampson is there too, who we heard a lot about a year ago when he was recruited. So I'm excited to see what this offense can do. And look, I mean, you're naming guys though. I mean, Sat, okay, we talked about Sat, but the other two guys, Roper, Beam, how can you even bring those guys up? They didn't work with Beamer. I mean, come on, to that PTSD that we're talking about, intern Joe.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's PTSD OCs that South Carolina has had over the last couple of years. Again, apologize for the connection tonight. We will get that corrected next week. But appreciate you guys tuning in. We will have we'll do another show next Tuesday. If the dates, times, anything changes, we will let you guys know. But plan on next week for Gamecock Talking Tuesdays, GC Live, Talking Tuesday nights. Appreciate it, intern Joe. Everyone.